Okay, I'm having to redo some of these. They keep deleting them, but I will keep recording them until I can get them to you. This is continuing on from the first part one of the testimony with Alan. During this time, Alan started making physical contact with me. At first, he would just grab my hand as I was leaving and say, "It's gonna be okay." And then after a while, he started pulling my hand and arm towards him to give him a hug and say, "Come here. I know this is scary. You're gonna be okay." It was weird and creepish, but I always sweetly replied, "Thank you. I really appreciate your help." At this point, I felt no connection to Alan, other than I thought he was a nice guy. Plus, he was married, and so anything physical with him was completely off limits for me. Then things got even more bizarre, but now with Atrium Buckingham, the apartment building I referred to in my testimony. Atrium Buckingham was the 6-unit apartment complex. It was originally in Mike's asset column in the divorce, and then for reasons that are too complicated to explain, it was moved to my asset column. So I wasn't originally supposed to get it, but I did. I texted Alan and told him about it, to which he replied, "Don't text me details like that on this number. Just come to my office." Okay, fine. I told him something weird is happening at this apartment unit. I have all of these applicants that desperately want to get into 1E. And what Alan told me here, I feel I can't share, just because it tells some things about how the FBI operates. But he told me things about Buckingham and agents there. I got even more freaked out. In hindsight, I honestly couldn't tell you if Alan knew what he was doing in that moment or not. But I know that my fear and paranoia spiked an all-time high after that week. He told me to take 1E off the rental market. He gave me the phone number for a man named Wade Blackwell and specific instructions on what to do if I feared my life was in danger. Drive my car to the airport, park it, rent a car, and drive at least 2 hours outside the city. Call Wade and give him instructions to where I was. He would keep me safe. Alan told me I needed to wipe my computer clean and get a new computer. I was so scared by now, I just looked at him and said, "Yes, okay." I actually asked why, and he said because the FBI would eventually show up at my door and ask for my computer. Alan said he could do it for me. By this point, I was putty in his hands. I basically did everything he told me. One afternoon, I was leaving his office, and he wanted to give me a hug. I said sure, and he held me for a long time. And when I pulled away, he pulled me back in for a kiss. I said no. I told him, "Alan, that can't happen. You're married. It just can't." He tried to hold on to me, but I pulled away and then left. It happened a few more times after that. He just kept trying to kiss me and wouldn't accept my no as a definitive answer. It got really frustrating, but at the same time, I was scared and I needed his help, so I endured it. I told him about the fraudulent issues with Veritas and Perfusion, and he told me to contact this attorney, Jonathan Whitehead, in Kansas City. I did, and I paid him $10,000 to start a case for us. I told him I was going to get a sledgehammer and open the walls of 1E, and he said, "No, don't. If you do that, you'll be left holding the bag of money. You need to sell it." And so I did. He also told me that the man who when we first started our Atrium Residential Company, we were subletting this office space, was FBI, and I had known Peter through our church since I was a kid. It was the church I grew up in, and I had heard that he was FBI, and so when Alan told me this, I was like, "Oh yeah, I know that, I knew that." But he confirmed it. So there was another agent watching us. That's what they do, they watch. Eventually, I kissed Alan, I cannot fully understand or explain that either. I think more than anything, he made me feel safe and protected, and it was something I really needed at the time. Alan started coming over to my house. One night while we were laying on my couch, he asked me why I finally kissed him back. I said, because you wouldn't give up, so eventually I gave in. And then I asked him, why were you so relentless in pursuing me? He replied, because I had to see if you were working for someone else. Typically, when they send in a woman, she'll flirt with you and tease you, but they won't make physical contact. Wait, what? I thought. So it was all a test. I was a test. In that moment, I felt very used and manipulated. My heart was heavy. I didn't know what to do with all of this information. The weight of everything that was happening was all too much. My mind was so lost and confused. I told Alan we needed time apart. His response was odd. He said with fearful concern, but I told you private things about my children. Again, I looked at him utterly confused. What was I going to tell people about his children? He was definitely operating on a different level than me, but there were private things about the FBI that he shouldn't have told me. I told Alan we couldn't be physical anymore. The relationship was conflicting with my morals. Alan still said he could help me with the case, but things were different now. The trust wasn't there. He texted me saying he made space for me in his office to come work on my case. He texted me a pic of the desk and area where we could work together. I declined. Then a week or two later, he called and said that he had fallen in love with me and wanted to be together again. I said no. From there, our contact lessened. I hired a new attorney, Stephanie Jones, and while I was gathering documents for her, I noticed that folders were being pinned that I hadn't opened in months. In your Explorer, when you open up and it shows the folders that you have recently accessed, it would have all these folders that I hadn't opened or what I was working on. And it was in that moment, it all kind of hit me that Alan could be monitoring me on the computer that he bought for me. He knew all of my passwords. He printed them out for me months ago. I don't even know how, but he gave me a spreadsheet with every online account and password I ever had. He set up my phone and a computer with Bitwarden with a password he created. I also realized that the computer he wanted to clean was Mike's old computer. Mike would often give me his old laptops, his hand-me-downs, and I would use those. There would have been scores of evidence on it. But I gave it to Alan in my fearful state, and he erased it. I was once again shocked and reeling from this awareness. I made a folder titled Alan and saved all the documents, emails, texts he sent me, and added them to the list of people involved. I moved everything back to my old computer and shut down the one he gave me. I know that I was misled and manipulated by Alan. It was like he created this environment of fear and danger and positioned himself as a safe place, a person whom I could turn to and trust. I felt so naive. I'm a trusting person and I completely bought into it. But the worst part was he took advantage of me sexually and pressured me to do sexual things I wouldn't have done otherwise. I felt so angry and disgusted with him and myself. I felt violated. He's a government agent. He cannot sexually manipulate an innocent woman to gain information. And what he did was wrong, and it needs to be reported.